Hello, I'm Jeff Costa, and welcome to another episode of Evaluating Out-of-State Rental Properties. Today we're going to be talking about errors of omission in listings. And if you've never heard that phrase, errors of omission, it's usually something you find in relation to a financial transaction. It's defined as errors that result from a partial or complete omission of something. So in a financial situation, it might be a partial transaction or a completely omitted transaction that materially changes an outcome. And when you look at rental property listings, you have to have a healthy amount of skepticism about what you're seeing. And it's really a good practice to ask yourself, what is missing from this listing, from the description and from the photos? If you listen to David Green's latest Bigger Pockets podcast, he said catfishing is real in real estate investing. It happens all the time. And in the case of a listing, it's not necessarily a malicious thing done on the part of the listing agent, but it's strategic choices that a listing agent makes to show the house in its best possible light and minimize any of the negatives. But as an investor, you kind of have to keep that in the back of your mind at all times when you're looking at a listing. So the one you see on the screen here is one in Rochester, New York that I actually put an offer in on and ended up walking away from based on what I found. But we're going to kind of cover some elements today of what's missing in a listing, right? Like, what am I not seeing? So this house, for those who may not know Rochester, is really walking distance from Strong Hospital, which is a great area for rentals, right? You can always count on a traveling nurse, someone who works at Strong, or perhaps a resident or student to rent this house out, right? Rent something that is close to where they work. So when I saw this property pop up, I was like, awesome. You know, this thing is a fantastic location, and let's take, and you know, immediately I'm drawn to the location, right? I also scan the listing and I'm like, wow, this looks like an updated house. Look at this kitchen with its new cabinetry, lighting, granite countertops, updated sink, and so forth. So I'm like, this is going to be a huge win. And this is where, again, you have to maintain that healthy skepticism. So, you know, if I scroll down here to the overview and go through it, right, here's some interesting things, right? Here's my new kitchen and granite countertops that I just, you know, drooled over being called out here. And then a garage roof is actually highlighted by the listing agent that they must have done something with the garage roof. They have a detached garage back here. So when I look at this listing, I think this is a fantastic listing from a marketing perspective. It totally pushes all the right buttons. The very first sentence is, location is everything, which is exactly what I was looking for as an investor. And it really talks about the fact that they've done improvements. It's got 4 bedrooms, which is plenty of space. They have replaced the sewer main to the house. Huge bullet dodge there, because those are really expensive repairs that usually triggers an insurance claim. So great, I don't have to worry about that. And then, as they mentioned here, the garage roof was recently tarred. So cool, like I don't have to worry about that, right? So again, it's a great listing from a marketing perspective. It's putting me at ease. And then they mention a finished basement that is not included in the square footage that's listed here. Cool, I get more space than I was expecting. And then they close out the same way they actually started, right? That, hey, this is near the University of Rochester, Strong Hospital, college towns, and all the bars and restaurants someone would want to go to. Oh, and by the way, there's a certificate of occupancy already in place that's good, you know, for 5 more years, right? So again, stressing the convenience factor. A really well done marketing focused listing by Mr. Eric McQuistion. So I looked at this and I immediately jumped on it and put in an offer so that I could, defray others from potentially grabbing this out from underneath me. But as I've said in multiple places, you always want to have an agent go look at the house with you with a FaceTime, or if not, take videos. So when we looked at this house, we saw a lot of the same things you see in these listing photos, right? Really nice kitchen, great clean hardwood floors, that kind of thing. The bathroom looks great. You've got this little sunroom in the front, or an all-weather room. A number of different bedrooms, so plenty of room for a family, for example. And as I look through these listings, something's jumping out at me. Like, I haven't seen anything about the mechanicals yet. And when I scroll down to the bottom, okay, I've got one picture of it, right? And that's fine. They've included it. They're not trying to hide it. But when I click in this photo, right, I'm looking at this with my skeptical eye, and what do I see here? I see rust at the top of the actual tank. And the tank looks admittedly a little bit older, right? But what this is kind of signaling to me is that someone lives here or owns this house, knows this exists, you cannot not see this, right? And knows the tank is leaking, but doesn't care, and has not actually decided to replace it. He is passing along, the seller is passing along this to the next buyer. So not a big deal, right? You can replace a water tank for $1,500 to $2,000. That wouldn't stop me from buying the property, but it does send a signal. Then the next thing I see is this train furnace over here, right? Which we discovered to be about 30 years old. And great that it's still running, right? But it wasn't something that you saw mentioned in the listing, right? There is no mention of mechanicals. And this is also something that you would likely have to replace because it's well outside its lifespan. Now, great for train if this thing runs for another 10 years, but it probably won't, right? So when I talk about errors of omission, right, it's these kind of things that you have to look for, because a new furnace might be 8 or 9K, a new water heater is another 10K. So my $219,900 house is suddenly 10K more. Right? And you can budget for this stuff in a capital expense budget and repair them as they break, or be proactive in, let's say, repair the water heater or replace it, sorry. But the signal here is that something is missing, right? I usually see listings that at least tell you the age of mechanicals so that you have at least some sense of what you're buying, especially when you're targeting investors. And as you may recall, in this listing, they actually mentioned that this would be great for investors. So here are my spidey senses going off. And I really don't know what to make of it, right? I don't know if I should be concerned or not concerned. So I continue into the listing. Let's go out of those pictures. And I see, everything else looks pretty straightforward. Now down here we come to the garage, right? This is a standalone garage, detached garage. It has a flat roof, which is a little puzzling because it's in Rochester, New York, which gets several months of snow. And you usually see pitched roofs where snow slides off of it rather than sitting on top of it as you would see in a flat roof. But it's a great convenience too for a renter, right? You've got covered parking, protected from the elements. It's not attached, so it's a little bit of a walk, but you can at least get to your car and don't have to brush ice and snow off it. So, I looked at this and I'm like, wow, this is great, right? A little garage that could definitely fit one car. It'd be ideal if it had two, right? Since the house is 4 bedrooms, but okay, cool, I can live with one. Now, we actually took the step of opening this garage door. And remember, we had seen in the listing that the listing agent was saying garage roof was recently tarred. I'm like, again, my initial impression was, cool, I don't have to do anything. Until we actually opened the garage door and looked up. And then we saw this, right? And this is just one example, but this was actually all across the garage. And you can kind of see the rot that has come in here, possibly some mold growth. All the boards are damaged. Another photo of it right here. But like this was everywhere in the garage, maybe even something growing right here. So what I thought was a benefit of, having a recently tarred garage roof is actually not, right? It's probably happened, that tarring probably happened too late. This damage was done at that time. And now I am going to have to likely replace a large part of the roof and rafters in this garage to be able to make this garage usable and ensure it's not going to fall in or cave in on a car that is parked out there. So now suddenly I'm looking at least another $5,000, possibly $10,000, depending on how extensive the damage is and if I need to put a pitched roof on. So this great little property, right, that I had thought was, super fantastic has now ballooned to another $20,000, let's say, possibly $25,000. Now that to me really bumped everything out. It killed the cash flow on the property because it's a single family home, not a duplex. So I walked away from this, right? But again, you didn't see this in the disclosures that we got sent over from the listing agent. There was no mention of this. And I get that, when you're writing an overview, it's all meant to be the positives, right? But you have to, as I said at the start of this, be very cognizant of what is not being said or not being shown. Have that healthy skepticism and look for errors of omission, right? What photographs are you not seeing? What elements are you not seeing in the listing description, right? Andy Grove wrote a book back in the 90s that said, only the paranoid survive. And I feel like if you're an investor, you have to have that healthy sense of paranoia when you're investigating properties that you want to purchase. All right, that's it for this week's episode. Hope it was helpful for you. If you enjoyed this, please like the YouTube video or leave a comment. That helps it get seen by more people. And we will talk to you next week. Thanks for your time.